or most people are struggling is they don't have a strategy. I mean, when we work with mostly, Fortune 2000 companies, these are the biggest companies on the planet. They have all the resources in the world. And you look at their, let's say you look at their blogs that they're creating, and there's no differentiation. They're targeting multiple audiences at the same time, so they can't get relevant enough. And if you looked at their key competitors' sites, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between what one company is creating and what another company is creating.
Hello and welcome to the Right Podcast, your source for inspiration in copywriting and content marketing. Listen in as I interview experts in the field and share entrepreneurial stories along with practical content marketing and writing advice, all to impact your life and habits as a content marketer. Welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to episode 23 in the Right Podcast. In today's episode, I am so honored to have Joe Pulizzi with me today, and I'm sure that everyone listening already knows who he is. You'd have to be living under a rock not to if you're in content marketing. So Joe, thank you so much for being here today.
Julia, thanks for having me. I can't believe that this is number 23. You know that's LeBron James' number.
Really?
So, I mean, it's Michael Jordan's number as well, but then it's, of course, LeBron James's number, and I'm a big Cleveland Cavaliers fan, so it must have been meant to be. It must have been meant to be that this is Joe on for podcast 23. So very excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
That is awesome. Well, absolutely. So you're the founder of Content Marketing Institute, and that is one of my all-time favorite industry publications. And I've even heard you called the Godfather of content marketing. But one interesting tidbit about you that not many may know, and don't hate me, I found this on your LinkedIn profile, is that back in 1998, you wrote a column on about.com, and that really intrigued me. So can you give us a little backstory on that as something that you did back in the day? Did that play into your content marketing and where you went with Content Marketing Institute?
It actually, I can't believe you found that either, because I think you're the first person that's ever asked me about that. Yes,
that's awesome.
When I was just getting started, I actually worked for an insurance company at the time in their internal communications department, and I became very interested in investing and started to read it, research it, and just fell in love with stocks and all the terminology that goes along with it. And I started to get information at that time. About.com was a fairly large, I mean, it was one of the players, as you remember,
right?
Well, one of the players in just like online content in general. And they had an opening for their investment club editor. And so I became the column. I forgot what the name. It's probably on my LinkedIn page, whatever, the program manager for investment club site. So every week I would produce a number of articles and keep the site completely updated for investment clubs. And I talked about how to set up an investment club and how to trade and how to look at PEG ratios and all those types of things. And so that was my first foray into online content. And I actually learned a lot from dealing with the folks at about.com.
Wow. Interesting. So was that like your first step into content marketing, or did you do anything before that?
That was probably that. I always say that my first foray was when I started working at Penton Media. I mean, when I started at Penton Media in 2000, so 2 years after the about.com thing, that I worked in their custom media department, which is basically that Penton Custom Media produced content marketing projects for large business-to-business brands. So we worked with Microsoft and Parker Hannifin and a number of other B2B companies on custom magazines and newsletters, and then later into blogs and those types of social media and those types of programs. But so I guess it was my first taste, not of content marketing, but of maybe digital content and creating that. And then when I got in with Penton Media, after that, I really started to learn about strategy and thinking about, okay, who is the audience and what do we want to deliver, and really coming at it from a media standpoint. So what we were doing at Penton is just taking what we knew as media companies and media executives and then transferring that knowledge over to the brands we were working with that used to just buy advertising, but they started to get interested in a bunch of content creation. And so that was so from 2000 to 2007, I worked at and then later ran Penton's custom media department, and that was where I really got interested in content marketing as an approach, as a marketing approach.
Wow, that's so interesting. Well, I got my start whenever I was a freelance writer before I started my company, Express Writers. I started back in 2011, and that feels like only a few years ago.
Well, I guess, 2011, 2010, 2011, that was the heyday, I guess, content marketing's coming out party.
Yes.
Because I started full time in the content marketing industry when I started Content Marketing Institute in 2007, so 10 years ago as we record this. And it was it was tough going for the first 3 years. People didn't know what it was. It was just sort of this weird outlier thing that a lot of companies did, even though it still was a fairly large pocket of money. A lot of companies were doing custom magazines. I mean, that's sort of the history of content marketing, came from custom magazines. But in 2010, 2011, as we were coming out of the recession, that's when it really started to take off. So I remember 2010, 2011 with very fond memories, because that's when I knew that I didn't have to go and look for a real job anymore, and that we were in a Content Marketing Institute was going to be successful, because I didn't think it was going to happen until that point.
That's really interesting to think of that, because, I didn't see that because I was in the middle of it, just joining it then. And it was very busy. I had so much work to do. There was so much content to be written. And it was even like a blog for a locksmith. So, I guess the understanding of content marketing was really growing to where even a locksmith realized, hey, I need to start a blog. So that's awesome.
That's a miracle, actually. That's what that's called. I mean, for those people listening to this that know of content marketing as this new thing, it's actually, there are case studies that go back 300 years for content marketing. We just never looked at it that way. So, as Ben Franklin was trying to grow his printing industry, he launched Poor Richard's Almanac as a content marketing initiative to sell more printing. So, that's 300 years ago. It was a big, we've come a long way since then, but now anybody, it's totally democratized content creation, as you know, so anybody can do this. But from 2007 to 2010, everybody was, and I guess that was a good time to launch a business, because everyone pulled back their marketing spend because of the financial crisis. And it was about 2010 where people started to actually come out of their turtle shells and say, oh, well, now we can start marketing again. And here was this thing called content marketing. As advertising wasn't working so well, they now had a different option to say, hey, we can look at this approach and this might work well. And we were, obviously we were already in it for 3.5 years at that point. And we were well positioned, and it was good to see that happen.
Yeah, that is awesome. So you're not the father of content marketing.
No, not at all. The whole Godfather of content marketing thing got coined. I don't know what year that. I think it was somebody tweeting out in 2009, 2010 or something like that. I probably get the most credit, and I don't know if it's rightfully deserved, but I was in the midst of it, is probably popularizing the term content marketing. There were a few people in the 90s that used the term content marketing, not consistently, but just kind of threw it out there once. And then I started using it when I was at Penton Media in about 2001 and kind of throwing it and testing out the term. And then in 2007, we came out and said, look, we're not going to call it custom publishing. We're not going to call it custom media. We're not going to call it branded content. We're going to call it content marketing, because that's what resonates with marketers, and that's who we were targeting. And then Brian Clark from Copy Bloggers he hated the term, and I think he still does hate the term, but he got behind it because people started to recognize that as sort of the industry approach. And then more and more people got behind it, thankfully. And now we're sort of calling this thing that we used to have 7 or 8 different terms for, and now we call it content marketing.
Well, that is really interesting to know the backstory of how all that happened. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a historian at heart. So I can go back in the day, even though it's not that long ago. I feel like it's been decades ago when this little industry called content marketing started, and here we are today.
That's amazing. Wow. It's like, it's kind of like technology, how fast it's moving.
Well, I mean, that's one of the reasons why we can talk about blogs and writing, and anyone can get into this today because of the fact that two things. One is that your audience, people that have smartphones and people that have access to the internet, they can choose to ignore anything they want to. So that means that our older approaches don't work as well. And we have to create valuable, relevant, compelling information on a consistent basis. The second thing is there are no technology barriers to entry anymore. I mean, when I was starting in 2000, 2001, and you wanted to create a content management system, you were spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on that content management system. 7 years later, you're using WordPress basically for free, or TypePad, or whatever the case is.
Wow.
So it's, those two things are the reason why we're having this conversation now.
That's amazing. Well, I love how you summed that up. It makes so much sense. So to move into more about our topic, which is content today, and I love how we're able to transition from history into this. It's amazing how much content is going out every day. And it's like 2 million blogs a day now. And with that amount of content going out, it's getting harder and harder to stand out and create that valuable, relevant content that you want your ideal reader to find. So what are some ways that you would suggest that brands can stand out, just creative ways to create their online content?
Well, we could probably obviously have a whole podcast just to talk about how do you take your current content and make it more creative. But that's actually not where most people are struggling. Where most people are struggling is they don't have a strategy. They don't, I mean, when we work with mostly, Fortune 2000 companies, these are the biggest companies on the planet. They have all the resources in the world. And you look at their you look at their blogs that they're creating, and there's no differentiation. They're targeting multiple audiences at the same time, so they can't get relevant enough. And if you looked at their key competitors' sites, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between what one company is creating and what another company is creating. So they don't understand that you really do have to create valuable, relevant, compelling, and differentiated stories. So my answer to you about how brands can stand out are ask yourself the question for your content niche to your specific audience. So hopefully you're targeting one audience at a time. You can't target more than one audience, and you're targeting one content niche at a time. And when you look at that, can you really become the leading experts in the world, informational experts in the world at that particular area? And if you can't, then you're not niche enough. Then you're not targeted enough. Like you really have to go down deep, because there's all kinds of opportunities, and there's another niche that's born every day. So you're right. There's all types of content clutter, but the opportunity is that people's interests and their needs continue to evolve. So there's all types of new opportunities, and that's what we have to go and find. And that's what most companies simply don't do. So I would say your problem, if you're having problems, let's say, getting your content in front of the right people, or it's not being shared enough, or you don't know why you're not building an audience, it might not have to do with the content itself. It might have to do with who you're targeting and your focus area. And are you really covering a topic in a way that's truly differentiated, that's going to stand out?
Wow, that is a great answer. I love that you're, pointing people to dig down that deep, because that's really hard to tackle. That's not something that's easy, but that's really the way to create the best content.
It's easy to have a conversation with somebody. I mean, I get it, let's say I just do a presentation somewhere around the world, and somebody comes out to me and they'll tell me their story and how they're really struggling to break through. And I just simply ask them the question, well, is this a content area that if you did all the right things, could you be the leading informational expert in the world on that topic? And they look at me and they laugh. No, there's no way that could happen. I'm like, well, then you're not targeted enough.
Wow.
You have to really, I just a real simple example that maybe will crystallize it is this: about a year ago, I was talking to a pet supplies company, and they started a blog, and they were starting to blog about different products and things available in the pet supplies industry. And they were saying, oh yeah, we started this blog, Joe. We knew you'd like it. We're really excited about it. And I looked at it and I said, you are not going to be successful with this. And they're like, what? This is, we're blogging. We're doing what you said. I said, no, you're not. I was like, you're covering an area that Petco and PetSmart and other billion-dollar companies are covering 1,000 times better than you. So what can you do? What do you have authority in and credibility in that you can tell a different story around a certain area that they can't do it? They haven't found an opportunity there or a content gap there. And we actually got to and they never did anything with it, but I thought the opportunity was for people that like to travel with their pets this time we were talking about recreational vehicles. There's a whole industry of people that like to travel in RVs with their pets. And there's a lot of challenges that happen with that, with their pets, and different toys available and all these different products. And there's actually a magazine available called Dogs and RVs, believe it or not. So you go and you dig deep enough into these niches. And I said, and they had a product line around those things. And I said, well, there's an opportunity. Nobody's covering that really well. There's only a couple people. Maybe you could go into that direction. So that's what I would ask the people listening to this, would just take a step back and look at the strategy and make sure, well, can you be the leading expert? Because if you absolutely laugh at that question, you need to go deeper.
Wow. That's so awesome. It's so simple, but it's so awesome. That is great. Well, to wrap this up, Joe, I know you have a book coming out soon. So do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So Killing Marketing is my fifth book, and this one's being co-authored with my partner in crime on our podcast, This Old Marketing, and also chief strategist at Content Marketing Institute, Robert Rose. So this is the second book that Robert and I are writing together. Comes out in September, launches at Content Marketing World in Cleveland in September. And this one is basically the premise is that we are looking at marketing completely wrong. And we might need to take a look and not be marketing the exact same way that we marketed 50, 60 years ago, which is what most people are doing, and relook at the opportunity of marketing as a business model, or basically taking a content first approach and leveraging that as a business model. So we believe there's 10 different ways to drive revenue from your marketing. Most organizations only leverage one or two of those. So we think that this is going to be the model for the future, the idea that you really have to take a look at your current marketing. You might have to kill it in order to save it. And that's what we talk about in the book. I
love that premise. I'm going to have to go read that.
Well, we
can't wait.
What we found is it's interesting. It's not, I think it's a somewhat simple concept, but nobody's talking about this. Like even with the companies that we work with that are these highly sophisticated multi-billion-dollar companies that invest a lot in their marketing, they're not thinking of it like a business model. They're thinking of it as, we've got to sell more stuff. And I think that if you just think about marketing as, we're going to sell more stuff and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to use inbound marketing, or we're going to use social media to do that, I think you're short-sighted. You may be successful for 3 to 6 months, but you're not going to be successful for 3 to 6 years with that. So in order to create something that's really going to work with you, you need to relook at your marketing department as something that can basically be the business model for the entire business. And that's what we believe marketing can be.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, I love that you're looking long term at the industry, with our clients, and we have thousands by now across the last 6 years. That is probably the number one struggle, is the long-term commitment to content marketing, because it's so tempting to jump ship when you don't see results in just a few months, but you have to stay committed. And that's something I love about the content that Content Marketing Institute puts out, and what you even write in your newsletters, how commitment to your quality and to keeping that up is going to result, but you can't expect that to happen overnight.
We covered the two biggest issues for brands of any size. One is, are you telling a differentiated story? And the second one is, are you delivering consistently on your content promise? Those are the two reasons that businesses fall down. And I don't love giving this answer, but when somebody says, Joe, I've got 6 months and I've got X budget, what can I do with content marketing in 6 months? I tell them nothing. Don't do anything. Go take your 6 months of budget and go interrupt people. Go buy lots of advertising. Wow. Don't invest in building an audience through content, because 6 months isn't enough time to build a loyal relationship. Now, if you have a year, if you have 12 to 18 months and you're willing to invest, now I've got some ideas for you. But in 6 months, don't even waste your time.
That is awesome. I love that straight up answer.
It saves everybody a lot of time and trouble. Because they think that, they set expectations in 3 to 6 months, they're going to see results. And by the way, it's possible. It's absolutely possible. Is it probable? No. It's possible. I like to see, 9 months, 12 months, 18 months for sure. But at least got to give that the 12-month mark, because in my last book, Content Inc., and we talk about this, all the great case studies that have ever existed for small businesses creating media platforms and building multi-million-dollar properties, they do so in about 12 to 18 months. That's when they first see monetization. So that's been my history. Somebody can say, oh, yeah, we can do it faster. I just haven't seen it happen. The cases that I've seen to be successful take at least 12 to 18 months.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, I think if you say it, then it is the truth, because
I don't know if my family would believe that, but I do have 20 years of experience. I've seen a lot. That's generally what we see. So.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here, Joe, and sharing what you know and doing that so freely. I really, really appreciate it. Have enjoyed talking to you. Oh,
anytime. And so when you get to the 42nd or whatever other number and you want back on, just and I'm happy to come back on.
Will do. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
I hope that you enjoyed today's podcast with Joe Pulizzi. I was so thrilled to record it and get to talk to Joe all about the history of content marketing and take a look at what brands are doing that could be holding them back from more success in their content. So Joe mentioned his book that's coming out this September. It's called Killing Marketing, and it's co-written by Robert Rose. So definitely keep an eye out for that this September. Have you heard that I am launching a course? I am, and it's coming out the end of this June 2017. It's an ultimate content strategy certification course. I'm teaching from the ground up how to build a practical, working, ROI-based content strategy for your content marketing. To get your certification, you'll have to actually build a brand strategy that builds as you go through each of the lessons in the 6 modules. It's a 6-week course, and again, that comes out the end of this June 2017. So sign up if you want to get notified when that comes out. Go to courses.expresswriters.com. As always, thank you so much for listening to today's Write Podcast. You can always catch our show notes at expresswriters.com/write-podcast.